Okay, let's dive right into this. Picture it. It's December 2025. The richest man on the planet, Elon Musk, is sitting in a podcast chair, looking directly at the camera. The host, Katie Miller, asks him a very simple, very direct question. Who do you look up to the most? His answer? Just two words. The Creator. Well, that short little clip sent the internet into an absolute tailspin. But in this explainer, we're going to dig into the actual data, and it reveals a much wider trend. As you'll see, Elon Musk is definitely not the only billionaire quietly or sometimes very loudly moving toward faith.
So, welcome to this explainer, where we are unpacking what we like to call the wealth and faith paradox. Today, we're analyzing documented source material that tracks 8 incredibly powerful billionaires. We're talking about some of the wealthiest individuals on Earth, absolute titans of tech, food, entertainment, and industry. And their surprising actions might literally reshape the culture we live in, because they aren't just integrating the Christian faith into their personal lives, they are baking it directly into the structures of their massive corporate empires.
And this brilliantly illustrates the core tension we're looking at today. You know the standard cultural expectation, right? It tells us that the richer someone gets, the less they need God. Success replaces prayer, power replaces dependence. As the old saying goes, the penthouse is the new pew. But the emerging reality we're seeing in the data completely breaks that narrative. We are not just talking about a polite cultural nod to religion here. We are talking about literal billionaires completely restructuring massive global operations around their theology.
All right, let's move into Section 1, Faith in Corporate America, and how these figures are restructuring massive empires.
You see, these aren't just clever PR moves. Take Chick-fil-A. Dan Cathy's $10.5 billion empire officially exists to glorify God. They literally close every single location on Sundays, and yet, incredibly, they generate more revenue in 6 days than most of their competitors do in 7. The Cathy family even went as far to signing a written family covenant promising to be faithful to Christ's lordship. You simply don't sign a legally binding family covenant just for brand positioning. Then, look at John Tyson, the chairman of Tyson Foods. This is a company that processes 1 in every 5 pounds of meat eaten in America. Tyson brought faith directly to the factory floor. He installed corporate chaplains for his 139,000 blue-collar workers. We're not talking about HR wellness consultants. These are actual chaplains offering prayer services right inside the massive industrial facilities. That is faith implemented at a massive scale.
But hey, if you think that's a bold structural move, wait until you hear this next number. $14 billion. That's billion with a B. That is the staggering net worth accumulated by David Green, the founder of Hobby Lobby. He started the whole shebang back in 1970 with a tiny $600 loan, and he grew it into an $8 billion a year company with 50,000 employees.
But honestly, the sheer accumulation of that wealth isn't the real story here. The story is what he decided to do with it. In October of 2022, Green made a monumental move. He took 100% of his voting stock in Hobby Lobby and moved it all into a trust. He essentially just gave his empire away. And he described a $14 billion decision as easy. Crazy, right? But why? Well, because his theology of stewardship just clicked for him. He fundamentally believed the money and the company were never really his to begin with, so he simply acted on that belief.
Moving right along to Section 2, the Hollywood secret. We are looking at quiet cultural influence.
3. That is the exact number of formal interviews Philip Anschutz has done since 1979. Think about that for a second. Over 40 years and just 3 interviews. This is a man worth over $11 billion, someone Fortune magazine actually compared to JP Morgan in terms of raw influence.
And his portfolio is absolutely staggering. He owns the LA Kings, the LA Galaxy, the Staples Center, Regal Cinemas, AEG. He's literally one of the most powerful men in American entertainment. Yet he drives himself around, he wears jeans and a Timex, and his biographers actually call him abnormally normal. But beneath those vast secular holdings is a deeply devout faith. Back in 2004, he explained that he wanted to stop cursing the darkness. So what did he do? He used his billions to finance Walden Media, the company behind explicitly Christian-themed films like The Chronicles of Narnia, and he put them in every theater in America. Oh, and he's also the guy funding those Pass It On billboards you've probably seen promoting integrity and compassion. It's totally behind the scenes. Zero press tours. Which brings us to Section 3, Silicon Valley's Surprising Believers. Let's talk about tech and theology.
So the crucial point here is that Pat Gelsinger didn't just suddenly find faith when his career hit a roadblock. Long before being forced out of Intel in December 2024, he approached his colleagues as a top-tier tech executive with a very simple question: may I pray for you? He ended up praying with over 10,000 executives. When he ran VMware, he literally referred to his 13,000 employees as his church that God had given him to minister to. So when the brutal layoffs happened at Intel and he was forced out, his immediate response wasn't anger or bitterness. It was actually to post scripture and call for 24 hours of prayer and fasting specifically for those laid-off employees. By March 2025, he took over as executive chair of Glue, a faith-based AI platform, openly stating his mission is to use technology to hasten Christ's return.
Now, look at Peter Thiel. The contrast here is just undeniable. On paper, you'd expect a libertarian tech titan worth over $1 billion living in San Francisco, openly gay, and famously the first outside investor in Facebook. But his documented actions, they tell a completely different story. He publicly professes a belief in the literal, physical, bodily resurrection of Jesus Christ. He names his massive companies, like Palantir, after works written by devout Catholics, and he studied deeply under the Christian philosopher René Girard. For Thiel, Christianity isn't some side hobby. He explicitly calls it the prism through which he views the whole world.
Let's look at the fascinating data points here. In May of 2024, Thiel delivered a 55-minute fireside chat entirely focused on the meaning of Jesus' death and resurrection to 200 Silicon Valley executives. And if that wasn't surprising enough, in the fall of 2025, he led a sold-out 4-part lecture series specifically on the Antichrist at the Commonwealth Club in San Francisco. I mean, whatever your personal views are, you just cannot deny the sociological fascination of an $11 billion tech titan literally lecturing on Christian eschatology in one of the most progressive cities on Earth.
And that perfectly sets up our final case study in Section 4, Elon Musk's spiritual trajectory. This is a real-time evolution.
If we map Musk's statements out chronologically, it reveals an impossible-to-miss escalation. Back in 2021, when he was asked by a satire site about accepting Jesus, he half-jokingly replied, "Sure, I'll be saved, why not?" It was very lighthearted, but by 2022, things shift. He posted that the concept of turning the other cheek wasn't weak at all, but actually held profound wisdom. Fast forward to July 2024, in an interview with Jordan Peterson that got a massive 18 million views, he formally called himself a cultural Christian and stated he was a big believer in the principles of Christianity. He echoed that exact same sentiment to Tucker Carlson in October of that same year.
Then we hit January 2025, where he states clearly, "I'm open to the idea of God." Then comes December 2025, that quote we actually open this explainer with, where he tells Katie Miller that the person he looks up to the most is the Creator. And finally, reaching massive, culture-shifting visibility in February 2026, he simply posts to his global audience, "I agree with the teachings of Jesus." A post that quickly racked up over 4 million views. We are quite literally watching the real-time evolution of a man whose influence spans the globe, moving all the way from a joking half-acceptance to a direct affirmation of Jesus' teachings.
So, what does this all mean? We really have to ask ourselves, is the ground shifting? From meat processing plants to Silicon Valley boardrooms to the timeline of the richest man alive, we are seeing incredibly powerful anomalies that completely defy our standard expectations of wealth and secularism. When titans of industry are restructuring their massive corporate empires around stewardship, and tech billionaires are suddenly lecturing on theology, what are the broader cultural implications here? It certainly leaves us with a whole lot to consider about exactly where culture, wealth, and faith might be heading next.